Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. This is going to be a short one. This is going to be about a book I'm reading by Ken Lewis called The Hidden Girl and Other Stories. And what I want to talk about is science fiction as a vehicle for exploration of morality and exploration of philosophy. And that's really what science fiction is at its core. Science fiction, done properly, is designed to make you think about the impact that technology and things have on our lives. And it's like, if you look at what is considered to be one of the earliest books, one of the earliest science fiction books, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, it's designed to look at what happens if we play God. And if you look, that's fundamentally what we get back to, is what impact will automation have on our lives? What impact will messing with our own psyches have in our mind? What impact will any of that have in our lives? And what I want to talk about is not just this book, but I want to talk about another book that I've talked about in the past a little bit, Exhalation, by Ted Chiang. And if you've heard Ted Chiang's name, it's because not only have I talked about him on the show, but he's also the one who wrote Stories of Your Life, which is the short story that Arrival is based on, which was nominated for Best Picture a few years back. And one of the things that I've noticed about these two is that both of them have very similar styles, but there's one fundamental difference in their portrayal of a story that kind of separates them and sets them apart from each other, and that is the use of character. Ken Liu, his stories are very character-driven, and their characters feel like people, and the characters themselves have emotions, they do things, and they are the driving force of the plot. And they interact with the scientific object or the science, and that kind of takes a back seat to the character. The science, they act on it, the science acts back on them, and their lives are impacted. So what happens to the people is displayed in a very organic and kind of human way. And you can see that, like, for example, one of the stories, Thoughts and Prayers, is about how people change when the worst of humanity comes out and technology impacts it, and how that works. It's a cautionary tale about leaning too strongly into AI and how AI can be corrupted, because AI is, at its core, influenced by anyone it interacts with. So that's there. Now, if we look at the other side, Ted Chiang, when he does his, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. I love both, quite honestly. Exhalation is probably one of my favorite books I've read recently. I really love, like, there are a few short stories in there that, like, stuck with me. I'm like, I would love to see this. I could see this as like a Hulu show or like an HBO Max show or something like that. The life cycle of software objects, and dizziness is anxiety, this is dizziness. I forgot what the full name is, and also the first one, the Merchant and the Alchemist, but it is also really good. But what I want to point out with this is his stories use characters almost to facilitate the science, and then the science itself kind of takes the lead in the story. So, like, if we look at, like, the life cycles of software objects, which is about, they create these little, kind of like Neopets or Webkins or something like that. They're little, like, virtual pets in this kind of Ready Player One type world, that you can play with and things like that. And the characters are there to kind of push along what's going on with the Digians, which is the name of the little pet things. And that's kind of the way it works for all of his. All of his characters tend to be scientists in some way. And scientists discover something, and then they try something new. There was one this is not on Exhalation, this is on Stories of Your Life and Other Stories, where the characters are creating life with letters, and they write letters and create life, and they seek out to create life in a way that they can create more life and have it be autonomous without having to have them be involved. and it's another, like, it's always a scientist discovers something, and the scientist is trying to find something, and what is the impact of the scientist doing this? Like, the scientist is not important in the story. The scientist is facilitating the science, and the science is the leading catalyst for the philosophical discussion. Meanwhile, in Ken Liu's book, the people and the impact on human lives is the catalyst for the discussion that you have after the fact. Either way, they're both a great way to do it, but I just wanted to point that out and talk about it a little bit, because I felt that was a really interesting way to really talk about science fiction. And usually in the modern world, when we talk about science fiction, we talk about big budget science fiction movies and things like that, like Ready Player One, which, I haven't read the book, but I feel like the book probably does more to really, lean into that aspect of it, or like The Hunger Games, which uses science to an extent, and it's not really the science that's the focus of the story, it's the mistreatment of humanity by other humans. And then like Star Wars, which isn't really science fiction, it's more science fantasy. It's like a fantasy story set in space instead of a fantasy story set in in a world. But yeah. If you have not checked out this book yet, it's brand new. I saw it at Barnes & Noble, and I picked it up from there. You can definitely check it out there. It's definitely worth your time to read. Ken Liu is a fantastic author. And I would love to see some of his stuff adapted at some point in the future. And also Ted Chiang. I mean, I've talked about his writing a lot, but if you haven't read Exhalation or Stories of Your Life and Other Stories, definitely worth checking out. You can check those out wherever you get your books or audiobooks or whatever. Libby, Audible, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your stuff. So the next book we're going to do, we'll be doing in the next few weeks. I'll tweet it out when I know which one it's going to be. And we'll be back with that soon. We'll have more episodes as the week goes on. Until then, have a great rest of your week.